Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because, well, we're unpacking a massive, sudden shift in international business that is literally sending shockwaves across the globe right now. Today, we're diving deep into the sweeping April 2025 United States tariff policy directed at Thailand. But more importantly, we're tracking its incredible ripple effect through the entire global supply chain. We're going to break down the math, the political motivations, the businesses caught right in the middle, and the delicate cross-cultural diplomacy required to sort this whole thing out.
Now, I want you to think about this question for just a second. What actually happens when a whopping 37% tax is suddenly dropped on billions of dollars of international trade? I know, it sounds like some highly abstract macroeconomic policy, right? But think about your last trip to the grocery store, or, the last time you bought a new phone. Have you noticed the price of shrimp or electronics lately? Global trade policy doesn't just sit in some dusty government office. It lands directly on your dinner table and right inside your wallet.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The drop. The new tariff policy explained. To really grasp the sheer scale of this impact, we've got to start at the baseline. On April 2, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a brand new tariff policy. The foundation of this is a 10% tariff applied across the board on all imports. The stated goal from the U.S. administration here is to correct what they perceive as global trade imbalances and to tackle the barriers that U.S. companies face when doing business abroad. So, 10% is the baseline for everyone. But that's really just the starting point.
Because for Thailand, that number spikes dramatically. Under this new framework, Thailand is hit with a massive 37% reciprocal tariff rate. That is an enormous leap from that 10% baseline. It's a number that literally changes the math overnight for every single company doing business between these two nations. But you're probably wondering, where exactly did that very specific 37% come from?
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how the U.S. administration got there. They claim this approach is entirely mathematically driven. Basically, according to their assessments, when you compare the tariff data side by side, Thai tariffs are approximately 72% higher than U.S. tariffs. And because of that 72% difference, the resulting action is this specific 37% reciprocal tariff rate, meaning it's a tax explicitly designed to mirror and offset the other country's charges, forcefully leveling the playing field.
But what makes this policy truly historic isn't just the math, it's the speed. Just look at this timeline. The U.S. announces the new tariff policy on April 2nd. Exactly 1 week later, on April 9th, the 37% tariff on Thailand becomes strictly effective. Wow, that is a rapid, jarring shock to the system. There is virtually zero transition period for these massive international logistics networks to actually adapt.
And because of that lightning speed combined with that huge percentage, Thai officials are bracing for some devastating immediate economic fallout. If these tariffs are fully realized, Thailand is staring down the barrel of estimated export losses between $7 billion and $8 billion. Billion with a B. That represents a catastrophic hit to their national economy, and it really sets the stage for a tense geopolitical standoff.
Moving outward. Section 2. The first wave. Government motivations.
Looking at the core motivations here, the two governments are coming at this from completely different universes. The U.S. government is treating this as a strict reciprocal tariff strategy. Their goals? Protect U.S. industries from perceived unfair competition, force foreign nations to lower their own tariffs, and, of course, achieve domestic political gain by appearing tough on trade. On the flip side, the Thai government is in full-on damage control. Their primary motivations are to prevent massive economic fallout in export-heavy sectors. Think agriculture, textiles, electronics. They desperately need to prevent job losses while somehow maintaining their long-standing bilateral relations and their reputation as a reliable U.S. trade partner.
Which brings us to our next ripple. Section 3. The second wave. Caught in the crossfire.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how panic manifests completely differently depending on which side of the ocean you're sitting on. Thai exporters are absolutely terrified of losing their market competitiveness. I mean, a sudden 37% price hike means U.S. buyers might just pick up and shift their supply chains over to tariff-neutral competitors, like Vietnam or Malaysia. Meanwhile, U.S. importers and retailers are equally stressed, but for totally different reasons. They hate this because it introduces immense operational complexity. They're scrambling for alternative suppliers, desperate to protect their own profit margins, and keep prices from just exploding on their store shelves.
Let's zoom out a bit more. Section 4. The third wave. Everyday consumers and global partners.
So how does this actually hit your wallet?
U.S. consumers are the ultimate indirect stakeholders here. You might not be importing shipping containers yourself, but you definitely buy what's inside them. Thailand is a massive exporter of some incredibly popular everyday items. We're talking canned tuna, shrimp, basic electronics, garments. When a 37% tax hits those goods at the border, that cost is almost always passed straight down to you, feeding right into broader cost of living and inflation concerns.
Zooming out even further to the global stage, the international community is incredibly anxious about this. Neighboring ASEAN nations are already gearing up for joint negotiations, really worried about regional trade stability. Major global players like the EU and China, they view this as a clear, glaring signal of a broader protectionist trend coming from the US. But the ultimate global fear here is a cascade of retaliatory measures. Punitive tariffs sparking more punitive tariffs, until the entire global trade system just destabilizes.
So, how do we fix this? Section 5. Calming the waters, the diplomatic solution.
Rather than just immediately firing back with their own punitive taxes, the Thai government is exploring a much more diplomatic economic countermeasure. They're actually signaling a readiness to boost their imports from the U.S. and actively lower their own tariffs on U.S. goods. The strategy here is smart. Voluntarily rebalance those exact mathematical trade figures the U.S. administration is so focused on. Fix the root of the complaint to get that 37% tariff reassessed without tanking their own economy.
So, the crucial point is that in international business, having the right economic proposal isn't enough. You have to communicate it perfectly. For Thai trade advisors, this requires absolute mastery of cross-cultural communication. Step 1 is adjusting the official tone to remain diplomatic rather than hostile. Step 2 is huge. Carefully navigating the friction between American directness and the vital Asian cultural concept of face-saving. You've got to resolve the conflict without humiliating either party. And finally, step 3 is tactfully framing those economic proposals so they clearly align with the U.S. goal of leveling the playing field, while still quietly protecting Thai interests.
As this incredible diplomatic high-wire act unfolds, it really leaves us with one massive lingering question to ponder. Do aggressive, protective trade barriers ultimately succeed in strengthening a nation's domestic industries, or do they simply force a chaotic, expensive reorganization of global supply chains, where the everyday consumer just ends up footing the bill? It's a wildly complex dynamic, and exactly how this U.S.-Thailand negotiation plays out is going to give us a major clue for the future of global trade. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and thank you so much for joining me on this explainer.